Coming up in today's newscast, Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit says that there will be no more delays in voting on the Haredi conscription law. The White House pledges to increase pressures on Iran, and a very rare First Temple period stone weight is unearthed in Jerusalem. Two incidents in the West Bank last night have now aroused the attention of Israeli police and security forces after stones were thrown at an Israeli car on Route 90 and a stun grenade was thrown at police. In the first incident last night, a 35-year-old individual was lightly wounded after stones were thrown at his car on Route 90 near the West Bank village of Sinjil. Later, in Khalkhulia, a stun grenade was lobbed at the doorway of a police station. Thankfully, no injuries were reported and police are investigating. But initial investigations suggest a criminal and not nationalistic or terrorism-related motive behind the attack. In fact, police believe the incident to somehow be linked to a string of recent shootings at the Ayalon and Hadarim prisons. Shots were fired towards the Hadarim prison last week, followed by another drive-by shooting 2 days later at Ayalon. There were no injuries reported, though, and two suspects from Khalkhulia have already been arrested in connection to the crimes. The suspects are alleged members of the Palestinian crime syndicate run by gang leader Odeh Coutier, and Coutier supposedly ordered the shootings after the prisons refused his request to attend his brother's funeral, in addition to an alleged spat between Coutier and his jailers. Coutier and members of his gang have additionally been convicted of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, extortion, and a host of other offenses. Reports from Cairo show that Hamas has now allegedly agreed to Palestinian Authority President Abbas's terms for Palestinian reconciliation on the grounds that Abbas completely lift sanctions against Gaza that he had in place to bring Hamas to negotiate. And although Palestinian sources say that reconciliation is now, quote, very close, most still remain cynical, especially as unity talks have failed so many times before. Well, returning now with the most recent analysis is Middle East expert from the Begin Sadat Center at Bar Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar, as always, it's a pleasure to have you in.
My honor.
All right, so let's just start. What's your initial kind of reaction to the news coming out of Cairo that, the agreement that Hamas is supposedly?
Look, since Hamas took Gaza over in 2007, more than 11 years ago, I keep saying that this divorce is a permanent divorce. It's clear-cut. Nothing can bring them together to any kind of an agreement because they live in two different times. Hamas has already a state in Gaza, whether we like it or not. They have borders, they have a government, they have ministries, they have army, they have a police, they have military industry, and they know how to produce projectiles and to shoot them. The PA is nothing but an employer of some thousands of Palestinians. That's all. They have absolutely nothing. And there is no way that Hamas will give up on their state only to give it over to somebody who is nothing.
So why these reports? Where are they coming from?
It's all a game in front of the Palestinian people who do want to see some unity, but the leadership cannot even agree on even the date. So to think that after 11 years of negotiations, and you know how many dozens of agreements they signed already, and nothing worked because there are two different mindsets. Look, the PLO is an organization which at some point in the past came to an agreement with Israel and signed with us the Oslo agreements. According to Hamas, this is totally impossible because Israel has no right to exist even with the size of a stamp on Tel Aviv's seashore. There's no way to recognize Israel at all. So definitely when it comes to Israel...
But again, doesn't it, you're talking about this political game. Doesn't it do more harm than good then in the eyes of the people when they see their governments playing this game? Because how obvious is it at this point?
Yes, but don't forget that neither the PA nor Hamas are elected. And they don't have to pay any dues for making mistakes.
So why do they need the game at all?
Because
if they're de facto dictators.
Look, you have to... Look, in the Arab mind, on the Arab culture, there is something which is called aib. Aib means shame. Shame on you. The shame is the last thing which any person would allow to have. So this is why they do anything in order to push the shame to the other side, just like a tennis game, to push the ball to the other side. And we are good. We wanted to come to reconciliation and to come to peace with the other side. Well, they are the bad guys. So this is in order to get rid of this allegation or the suspicion that you are the one who brought the division. They try to blame the other side. And this is why they are motivated to continue the negotiations in order to be able to blame each other.
So based on that, I understand kind of the motivations. If I take that, then I can understand the motivations for the Palestinian Authority. But for Gaza, as you said, Hamas, they already have a state in a sense. So wouldn't it be even less shameful? Wouldn't it be more prideful to just say, you know what, we're done, we're going to have our own little thing and that's it? Or no, because as long as Israel exists, the mission's not over?
They have very clear aspirations to take the West Bank over. Means Judea and Samaria. This is why they want a reconciliation to be allowed to work openly, legally, in the public sphere in Judea and Samaria as well. That's why they need the reconciliation in order to take Judea and Samaria over after they took Gaza 11 years ago.
All right, Dr. Kedal, as always, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
It seems that fires within the government keep popping up faster than they can be put out, as Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit has now made clear that there is no way the courts will approve another extension for voting on the Haredi conscription bill. Speaking to cabinet ministers on Sunday, Mandelblit said that an extension couldn't be requested anyway, as the current December 2nd deadline is itself already an extension. So the problem for Netanyahu here is that he delayed the issue in efforts to avoid angering his religious coalition members, but now that there are no more delays, Netanyahu no longer has the majority necessary to pass reforms anyway. And if a solution isn't passed by Sunday, then the government will be left with two options: to draft ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students by the thousands, or to stand in violation of the law. Perhaps to his benefit, though, at least Netanyahu is acting defense minister as well, following Avigdor Lieberman's resignation, meaning that no one can force Netanyahu to enforce the draft or initiate early elections. But speaking of Lieberman's resignation, that brings us to another one of the coalition's so-called fires. When Lieberman left the coalition, the security cabinet was left with too many members in relation to the full cabinet. That means that the security cabinet has been operating in violation of Israeli law for the better part of 3 weeks. To solve this crisis, Prime Minister Netanyahu downgraded ministers Yuval Steinitz and Zev Elkin to be alternating security cabinet members. That means that they'll trade between voting rights and an observer status in the security cabinet month to month. But critics from the opposition have already called this decision a mockery of the security cabinet itself. IDF officials have just reported the opening of 2 independent probes into the botched Gaza operation that led to a massive flare-up in violence with Hamas earlier this month. Israeli operatives were discovered in the southern Gaza Strip on November 11th in a mission that ended with the death of an Israeli lieutenant colonel and at least 7 Hamas members. And the subsequent 25 hours were marked with nearly 500 Hamas rockets raining down indiscriminately on southern Israeli civilian targets. Well, now the investigation into just what happened on that fateful night will be conducted by the Military Intelligence Division of the IDF, and it's expected to be submitted within a few weeks' time. The secondary probe is looking more into how raids such as the one in question are conducted in the first place. But meanwhile, Hamas has continued their investigations into the incident as well, having already released images of suspected Israeli operatives. And now, less than a few days after the photos were published, the Hamas military wing spokesman has announced that the effort reportedly paid off, earning Hamas, quote, important information regarding the events of the IDF raid. It's not yet clear what information Hamas is referring to, but we do know that the Gaza terror group has now been operating under the assumption that the unit they're looking for was secretly active in Gaza for a long time, leading up to the November 11th shootout, and right under their noses. Moving on, the White House is reportedly now trying to increase pressure on the International Atomic Energy Agency, following Israeli complaints that the United Nations atomic watchdog wasn't taking its intelligence on Iran seriously. Earlier this year, Netanyahu revealed a massive cache of materials revealed by the Mossad on Iran's nuclear program leading up to the JCPOA nuclear agreement.
Here's what the files included: incriminating documents, incriminating charts, incriminating presentations, incriminating blueprints, incriminating photos, incriminating videos, and more. We've shared this material with the United States, and the United States can vouch for its authenticity. We will also share it with other countries, and we'll share it with the International Atomic Energy Agency.
But according to the Foreign Ministry's political director, Alon Ushpiz, the IAEA was delaying its investigations. And then in a report in Axios earlier this week, it was revealed that a Trump envoy, Brian Hook, allegedly told Israeli officials that the Trump administration would, quote, work aggressively to make sure the IAEA seriously addresses all information provided by Israel, the United States, and other countries regarding the Iranian nuclear program, end quote. The State Department has not yet commented on these reports, however, and at any rate, it's unclear what effect the supposed added pressure will have, as both the EU, Iran, and all the other JCPOA signatories except the United States have pledged again to uphold the nuclear pact. Global anti-Semitism is seemingly on the rise again now, as several recent incidents and poll results shed more light on an ugly truth. This last weekend, a man identified as Mohammed was captured on security footage getting into a hit-and-run accident while attempting to run over Orthodox Jews outside of a Los Angeles synagogue. He also shouted anti-Semitic epithets at them. And then just south of LA, the faculty of Pitzer College in Southern California decided to suspend its study abroad program with Haifa University and to condemn university trustees for overturning a divestment motion. This just after similar incidents at the University of Michigan. In response, Haifa University responded simply that while they support the values of freedom of speech and academic freedom, quote, we oppose the BDS movement against Israel as well as boycotts targeting any individual or institution on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, religion, race, gender, or other discriminatory factors, end quote. But as we know, anti-Semitism doesn't stop in the United States either. On Sunday evening, an Israeli journalist was attacked in Berlin trying to film a report. In the video, it can be seen that there are men interrupting her and attacking her and her cameraman with a firecracker. Broadcaster Antonia Yamin claims that the attack occurred because she spoke Hebrew. Then back in April, there was another case in Germany involving a Syrian migrant who whipped his belt at an Arab man wearing a kippah. The man being assaulted filmed the incident on his smartphone as part of a social experiment, which quickly spread on social media and triggered rallies to show solidarity with Jews. Then finally, nearby in Amsterdam, a survey questioning 557 respondents of Dutch Jews showed that half said they were afraid to identify as Jews publicly, which puts into context just how insidious the results of a parallel CNN poll are. CNN found that in 7 different European countries, at least 20% of European respondents think that the Jews have, quote, too much influence worldwide, end quote. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the report saying, I'm concerned because I think anti-Semitism is an ancient disease that rears its ugly head, and it first attacks the Jews, but it never stops with them. It then sweeps entire societies. Newly elected Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortes is again drawing ire from the right wing and conservative circles this week after supposedly likening the crisis on the U.S.-Mexico border and incoming migrant caravan to Jewish refugees who were turned away during World War II. The 29-year-old incoming member of the United States House of Representatives tweeted that, quote, asking to be considered a refugee and applying for status isn't a crime. It wasn't for Jewish families fleeing Germany. It wasn't for targeted families fleeing Rwanda. It wasn't for communities fleeing war-torn Syria. And it isn't for those fleeing violence in Central America, end quote. But conservatives took hold of this tweet to suggest that Ocasio-Cortez was comparing South and Central American migrants to the 6 million Jews that were brutally and systematically exterminated by the Nazi regime. Perhaps because of previous comments Cortez has made that were seen as insensitive or ignorant with respect to Israel and the Palestinians. But Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, responded by recommending that Cortez, quote, take a tour of the Holocaust Museum in D.C. as it might help her better understand the differences between the Holocaust and the caravan in Tijuana, end quote. Perhaps not so surprisingly, however, the Holocaust Museum in D.C. actually agrees with Ocasio-Cortez and released a statement suggesting that it is, in fact, not out of place to liken the flight of the Jews from Nazi Europe to the refugee crises today, even if the conditions in the originating country and the nationality of the asylum seekers are different. The statement said, quote, the museum continues to have grave concern about the global refugee crisis and our response to it, especially as during the 1930s and 1940s, the United States, along with the rest of the world, generally refused to admit Jewish refugees from Nazism due to anti-Semitic and xenophobic attitudes, harsh economic conditions, and national security fears, end quote. Similarly, Melanie Nezer from the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS, said Cortez's comment was an entirely appropriate one. In fact, she even explained that, quote, the laws we have today in this country were based on the UN Convention of 1951, which was based on Jewish refugees being turned away during World War II. When you look at my face, you may take it for granted that you can clearly see how I feel. Well, students from the Holon Institute of Technology have developed a new system that helps people learn facial expressions interactively by bringing emojis to real life in a dynamic and really creative way. The system is, of course, called Emotion, and founders Bar Shabtai and Shir Dahan are here to tell us all about it. Bar Shai, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for
it's a pleasure to
having
have
us
you. So, I don't know who to start with. But we'll start with you because you're closer. Tell us a little bit about emotion.
Emotion is an activity generator for learning and exercise facial expressions. It all started when we took the course in HIT about facial expressions, and it was very interesting for us. During the course, we needed to memorize all the kinds of movements of the face that you can see here, and from pictures, so it was very inconvenient for us.
Who is this really for? Like, who is this serving?
Actually, the system is for everyone. Also for students that learn a facial experience in a formal course, or if you just want to learn it.
So, okay, so I can understand maybe for people who may or may not be, you know, like on the Asperger's spectrum or something like that, who have trouble identifying facial expressions, this might be a cool tool. What was kind of the process of creating this?
It all started when we took the course, so we needed to learn all about the facial movements and memorize it.
But I mean, really, like, how did you create the whole program itself?
Yeah, we started to understand all the kinds of movement. There's more than 50 of them that we learned. So we started to actually make it. All the face we see here, we created ourselves, and so we started on that. And after it, we did the website itself. So you have an activity that everyone can make with missions and questions, and teachers that learn about facial expressions can do it for their students.
Amazing.
And anyone can do it for itself, for their friends, or for himself if you want to exercise them.
And then Shai, I'll come back to you for the end here. You know, are you planning on selling this at all, or you know, what's your goal for this program?
No, this is our final project in HIT. We have our team, which help us all the way, Professor Miki Ronen and Rotem Israel Fischelzon, and also Dr. Gili Peleg that help us to make all the facial expression.
Wow. All right.
It's for free for everyone to use, and they can go in line and play with it and explore all the kinds of movements that.
That's amazing. All right. Well, so find it online. It's the Emotion app. Thank you both so much for coming in today.
Thank you
it's
so
really
much.
been our pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Although there has been continuous debate regarding women joining combat units in the military, the debate hasn't stopped ladies in the IDF from making history. It's now been revealed that 6 female recruits will serve in the new Navy missile ship, the Sal 6, as soon as it's ready. Until it becomes operational in 2019, though, the soldiers will serve on the Sal 5. And regardless, this is the first time females will serve as naval fighters on the Navy missile ships. The Naval Officers Course was open to women in 1998, and in 2014, women were enabled to become naval vessel commanders. But there hasn't been any female soldiers on missile ships before these 6 female recruits. Well, now the soldiers will do a 6-month-long basic training course on base in Haifa, and according to the IDF, the soldiers will serve in command and control centers on their respective naval vessels. The military has also stated that the new Sal 6 is set to defend strategic assets such as the country's offshore natural gas reserves, that and maintaining the quiet in seas near and far, along with destroying any enemy war fleets. The Sal 6 will also be the fastest ship in the Sal series, with a maximum speed of 26 knots, and will be manned by a crew of 70 sailors. Finally, the ship will have 2 naval Iron Dome missile defense launchers and a range of other defensive capabilities as well. Let's talk about meat. No matter what your perspective on this topic, meat and the meat industry poses a large problem to our society from a green energy standpoint, health standpoint, ethical standpoint, and more. Well, an Israeli startup, Jet Eat, claims that it has solved just about all those problems by creating a 3D printed steak. And get this, they apparently taste and feel like the real thing, even though they're completely vegan. AlTV's Doriel Mizrahi is here to tell us all about it. Doriel? Hello.
Okay, so Jet Eat was established in the beginning of this year, and the CEO, Eshchar Ben Shitrit, he claims that he was a meat-loving carnivore, and he loves steaks, and he loves burgers. And he was like, wait, like I also love animals, I need to find an alternative. I need to really create something that's vegan-friendly, that's healthy, but does not compromise the taste of meat. So that's their goal.
All right. So, I mean, it sounds like it's pretty much everybody's goal that I know. You know, like I myself, you know, I'd love to cut down more on meat and meat products and things like that. All of us, sure, you know. And again, like we said earlier, for ethical reasons, for health reasons, for the earth.
And lucky for us, they're saying they're going to be in stores by 2020. So So let's see.
That's very promising. Yeah, it's making me very hungry. But therein lies the question. How real is it? Because I've heard a lot of places say, "Oh yeah, my vegan food is really great."
Okay, so because he loves meat so much, he said they characterize it by a few things, like what meat is, like the texture, where does it come from, like the tender, the muscle and stuff like that. And they took all this and they made natural formulas to create this, and it's actually through 3D printing, which is interesting because he said the way they get the texture and the color and the tenderness is by each layer and a different, I guess, code for it. So it's very interesting.
Just by kind of, by latticing that kind of, leveling the layers and all that stuff.
And I mean, they claim that it tastes exactly like meat. So I guess until I try it, I won't fully believe it. But I mean, sounds believable.
I'm on the fence with you for now, but I'm definitely open to try it. And especially, here in Tel Aviv, it's such a perfect place to try it. And Israel, really,
heaven
in general, yeah, exactly. It's a great place to do the testing and to see, what the market research and the response is.
And it's not even only Tel Aviv. Like if this is true, and if Israel is at the forefront of 3D printing meat, then it could be revolutionary for the world. Like you said before, like for animals, for globally, socially, so many things could come from this.
All right, well, if I can get steak and fries without hurting a cow, that would be wonderful, and I would very much enjoy that.
They're actually doing their testing in collaboration with the university in Haifa, the Technion.
Sure.
So if you have any connections there, their labs are there.
Get it, yeah.
And
they're one of many. We understand, which is good. It's nice that Jedid isn't the only company that's making all these vegan options. And
Israel's like the biotech and the food tech industry is so advanced. You have companies that are creating lab-grown meat, lab-grown poultry from chicken cells. Like it's crazy. There's a crazy range, and if it comes out soon, we'll all get to try this.
That's incredible. And what about the 3D printing technology? Is there something unique to their printer or 3D printing technology here in Israel as well?
3D printing in Israel is just like so advanced. Like there's so many companies who use that for fashion and for printing food and even printing houses. So there's such a wide range, and Israel being startup nation, they'll take it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
All right, well, Doria, thank you so much. This is amazing, and I cannot wait to bite into one of these things. Yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Aaron.
Finally, for today, a very rare and tiny biblical stone has just been discovered near the Western Wall by a volunteer at the City of David Sifting Project. The stone has been since identified as a Becca stone weight, and it's one of only a handful of similar stones to have ever been unearthed. The Becca is a First Temple period weight used as a standard for measurements or payment, and it was mainly used by pilgrims to pay their half-shekel taxes before arriving to the Temple Mount. Now, this particular Becca stone was found in sediments collected near the Robinson's Arch back in 2013 in the Emek Tzurim National Park, and it's since been dated as being around 3,000 years old. But there are two other reasons that this particular find is exciting researchers. The first is that, unlike previously found Becca weights, this one is inscribed in mirror script, meaning the inscription itself is written backwards, suggesting that the artisans who made Becca weights were the same artisans commissioned to create seals and other items with reversed images and text. IAEA archaeologist and director of excavations Eli Shukron said that, quote, apparently the seal craftsman got confused when he engraved the inscription on the weight and mistakenly used mirror script as he was used to doing, end quote. And the second reason is the location of the discovery being just beneath the ruins of King Solomon's temple, because it again strengthens the correlations between biblical accounts and archaeological ones. Shukron again explained that, quote, this is a word that is used both inside and outside the Bible. You don't need to ask too many questions. Just open the Bible and see it. It's very simple. You can see Becca written in the Bible and what it was used for, and there you have it, end quote. And indeed, the Becca is mentioned twice in the Torah, once in the book of Genesis regarding a golden nose ring given to Isaac's wife Rebekah, and again in Exodus as a way to weigh ingots of silver for payment. Finally, the Becca stone weight is now set to go on display for the public next month during Hanukkah. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. I don't know about your day, but mine, working in the news, is often an emotional roller coaster. So today's word is regesh, meaning emotion. Now, an emotion, or regesh, can be brought up for all sorts of reasons, in connection to another person, to a song, or even just for the weather. And people described as regish, or emotional, are usually just overflowing with these feelings, or regashot. But even though it might margish or feel weird to do, remember never to write your regesh or emotion off as nothing. You're allowed to feel any way you want, and I feel better just saying it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be mostly clear and cool with a low of around 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect partly cloudy skies and a slight drop in temperatures to a high of 76 or 24 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.74 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.